Big round of applause for Peter. All right. Hey, folks. My name's Pete. I'm going to talk about the carbon bubble today. First of all, I'm going to talk to you about financial bubbles. What happens when a financial bubble is created is the value of any industry or specific sector in the market is much higher than it needs to be. And then when the market realizes that, it self-corrects and it sends these clip art bankers crying. So what's the next big bubble in the world? I believe it's going to be caused by climate change. Basically, everybody in the world agrees that we need to act on climate change, even those radical hippies at the World Bank. Everyone agrees that we need to keep it to 2 degrees above pre-industrial level warming. So my presentation is based on a report from the Carbon Tracker Institute. Basically, they have found that we have about 565 gigatons left of carbon dioxide to burn before we pass that 2-degree threshold. We have an 80% chance of getting there. The trouble that they found is that fossil fuel companies actually have 5 times that amount of fossil fuels on their books in the valuation of their companies and ready to burn. So 80% of that oil, coal, and gas needs to stay in the ground if we're not going to cook our planet. So what happens when the market realizes this is called the Great Global Write-Off. $20 trillion worth of assets are all of a sudden going to become unburnable and not workable. And so when that happens, obviously, this is going to cause economic chaos, just like the GFC in 2008. So, who's taking this seriously? The government of the UK has looked in their parliament about how their country is exposed to this and how their financial markets are exposed. Business journalists from the Wall Street Journal, the Globe and Mail, and banks such as HSBC and Citibank are sounding the alarm about this, as well as international institutions like the International Energy Agency and the World Bank. So how exactly would this happen? Ideally, it would be our global climate negotiations realize that we have a carbon budget and kind of manage and how to do that properly. More likely will be national policies like the USA and China are currently abandoning coal. And ideally, cheaper green energy will be able to move into there. So the good news is that renewable energy has completely transformed the energy market in the past 3 years. Solar is now actually cost competitive with coal in a lot of places. And by 2018, you can expect that our cities will actually be powered by solar energy, because new technology like molten core reactors are going to make this possible. The truth is, it's already kind of started. In northern Alberta, a company called Total had plans for an $11 billion tar sands mine that they completely scrapped because they weren't able to make it economically viable. And the same thing in the US, there are coal plants closing and they're moving to renewable energy. It's just not viable anymore. So a couple people have solutions that maybe we can keep on burning fossil fuels. It's okay. Carbon capture and storage is one of them, where you take carbon out of the air and you pump it into the ground. Unfortunately, it's crazy expensive. It doesn't really scale up to the scale that we need, and it might actually be counterproductive. Geoengineering is another solution. It's not a solution. This is a terrible plan B. Basically, the proposals that they have are to pump chemicals into the upper atmosphere to try and deflect the sun's rays, or dump iron in the ocean to cause algal blooms to take CO2 out of the atmosphere. This is not something we want to do. So what do oil companies think of this? Basically, they've said that they expect energy demand to keep growing until the middle of the century. And essentially, they're going to say, people are going to want this stuff, so we're going to burn it. It's essentially just try and stop us. We have plans to burn this. We are going to burn it. They don't think that governments are actually going to do anything about climate change. And I think the really important thing here is that you have to realize that they can't picture a low carbon world. It doesn't work with their business model, and they can't compute that we're going to get off fossil fuels. Another person that's going to be hurt by this are Petrostates. I'm from Alberta. Our 2 main hockey teams are literally the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames. Our entire economy runs on oil and gas, and when oil and gas busts, as it has in the past, the government is unable to provide infrastructure and social programs, and especially that. So what can be done? Our leaders can diversify our economy. especially in terms of moving towards a low carbon technologies and moving away from fossil fuels. They can require that their financial institutions and stock markets report the exposure of themselves to the carbon bubble and then assess the systemic risks in our system. What can we do about it? Obviously, most people here probably work for an NGO or for teaching English. We don't have a lot of money to throw around. To take your money out of fossil fuels, that gets a lot more traction in a world that's run by money. I think a lot of people think, oh, it'll never happen. There's no way that people will actually pull money out of fossil fuels. But even Barack Obama realizes that we're not going to be able to burn everything that we have. And what's really cool is that support for actually taking really aggressive climate action, even if it hurts the economy, is skyrocketing in the past few years as people are seeing what's going on. So have we actually done this before? Christopher Hayes wrote an essay about the political economy of slavery versus the political economy of fossil fuels. And it's essentially entrenched interests that have a quote-unquote asset that is going to be worthless for them. Of course, that took a bloody civil war, so we have our work cut out for us, but I think we should get to work.